You don't count. That's what my sister said when I found my seat assignment next to the service hallway. I'm Grace Wellington. I'm 29, and I should have known this was coming. The smell was terrible. Lilies trying to cover up bleach from the cleaning supplies. I could hear the DJ inside testing the microphone while I stared at this folding chair they'd stuck me on. My mom, Patricia, was smoothing down her champagne dress, doing that thing where she won't look at you when she's embarrassed. Dad, Richard, kept checking his phone like he had somewhere better to be. I was holding this gift I'd spent way too much time picking out, and I just stood there thinking, you know what? I'm done. No crying, no arguing, no begging them to explain why their other daughter got relegated to trash can duty. I walked outside into the Vermont air, and 10 minutes later, the whole reception went to hell. But let me back up and tell you how we got there. So Chloe picked the Lakeside Mountain Resort for her wedding. Of course she did. It's one of those places that costs more than my car and looks like something you'd see on a rich person's Instagram. Very look at me. I have money vibes. Which makes sense because our family owns Wellington Hospitality Group. We run a few boutique hotels around New England. Not huge, but comfortable. I drove up from Boston by myself, which honestly I prefer these days. 3 hours in the car gave me time to think about Mom's last text. Please, Grace, no drama today. This is Chloe's moment. Translation? Shut up, smile pretty, and don't remind anyone there's another daughter in this family. I've been getting that message my whole life. You know how some families have that golden child thing? Chloe was definitely ours. She got riding lessons, pageant dresses, the whole princess treatment. I got good grades that nobody really cared about. When she threw fits, people came running to fix whatever was wrong. When I had problems, I figured them out myself. Mom always said I was so independent, and Dad would nod and call me self-sufficient. What they really meant was I was convenient to ignore. The thing that really got to me happened about 6 months ago. We had this family dinner where Dad announced his big plan for the business. Chloe was going to inherit controlling interest in Wellington Hospitality after she got married. Just like that. Never mind that I have an MBA in hospitality management. Never mind that I've been working in marketing at a tech company for 5 years, learning everything I can about business operations. Never mind that Chloe has never worked a single day for the family company. But here's the kicker. Tyler Brooks isn't just some random guy Chloe fell for. His family owns Brooks Hotel Empire. They've got properties all over the East Coast, and they were looking to partner with smaller boutique chains like ours. So Chloe's wedding wasn't just a wedding. It was basically a business merger with a white dress and an open bar. I figured that out when I saw Mom's planning notebook sitting on her kitchen counter a few weeks ago. I wasn't snooping. I just grabbed it thinking it was a grocery list. But it was full of wedding details mixed with business transfer documents and notes about securing Chloe's future with the Brooks partnership. There was also this handwritten note that made my stomach hurt. Grace. Maybe distant table? She makes Chloe uncomfortable. Makes her uncomfortable. Like I was some kind of problem that needed to be managed. So anyway, I'm walking into this fancy ballroom, and I can see my family through the glass doors doing their photo shoot. Mom's glowing in her mother of the bride mode. Dad's doing his successful businessman pose, and Chloe looks like she stepped out of a magazine. The perfect family picture, with one person missing. This wedding coordinator comes up to me with her clipboard and that fake customer service smile. You're Grace Wellington? Yeah, that's me. She checks her list and her smile gets weird. You're at table H1. That's our hallway seating. I actually laughed because I thought she was joking. She wasn't. Hallway seating. Like, literally in the hallway. They'd set up this little folding table next to the service doors, where the catering staff kept wheeling out trash bins and leftover food. From there, I could watch the entire reception through the glass, like I was at some museum exhibit called The Family You'll Never Really Be Part Of. I sat down on this squeaky folding chair and just stared at them for a while. The whole scene looked perfect from the outside. Chandelier lighting, beautiful flowers, Everyone dressed up and laughing. But there was this wall between me and all of it. Not just the glass doors, but something bigger that had been there my whole life. That's when I pulled out my phone. I wasn't trying to cause trouble. I was just bored and kind of hurt. So I started scrolling around. And that's when I remembered something my friend Sam from work had told me. Sam does freelance social media consulting for event vendors sometimes, and she'd mentioned that you wouldn't believe what people post about their own events. It's like they forget LinkedIn is public, she'd said. The stuff wedding vendors share in their professional groups would make your head spin. So I opened LinkedIn and started looking up some of the vendors for Chloe's wedding. The planner, the venue coordinator, the caterer. I was just curious, you know? But what I found made me feel sick. There were photos of invoices marked Wellington Hospitality, corporate event. The wedding wasn't being paid for personally. The whole thing was being charged to our family business as some kind of company retreat. A $150,000 company retreat. For 2 days. At a luxury mountain resort. And that's when I knew this wasn't just about a seating chart. But the fake corporate charges weren't even the worst part. I kept digging through LinkedIn posts and vendor group discussions, and I found something that made my hands shake. Someone had screenshot a deleted Instagram story and posted it in a private wedding vendor group, asking if this kind of behavior was normal from brides. It was Chloe, in her wedding dress, holding a champagne glass with this caption: "When you realize you're about to own half of Vermont's boutique hotel scene, and your sister still thinks she matters, #blessed, #businesswoman. She'd deleted it within a few hours, but you know how the internet works. Nothing ever really disappears. I took screenshots of everything. The invoices, the vendor discussions, that Instagram post. My phone was getting hot in my hands from how hard I was gripping it. This wasn't just about me getting stuck at a bad table anymore. This was about my family's business being slowly destroyed by someone who thought I was a joke. I kept scrolling through professional groups where wedding vendors share stories. There were more posts about Chloe than I expected. Complaints about last-minute changes, demanding refunds for services that were already provided, trying to get vendors to inflate their invoices so she could pocket the difference. One caterer wrote, "Client insisted on billing everything as business entertainment, then asked for kickbacks on upgraded menu items. Red flags everywhere." The picture was getting clearer, and it was ugly. Chloe hadn't just been planning a wedding for the past year. She'd been systematically bleeding money from Wellington Hospitality, using fake vendor contracts and inflated business development expenses. And once she inherited the company through her marriage to Tyler, it would all be legal. My dad had no idea what was happening. He'd been so proud of Chloe for taking initiative with the business side of wedding planning. Meanwhile, she was setting up the company to go bankrupt right after she took control. That's when I heard heels clicking on the marble floor behind me. I looked up and there was Chloe, looking like something out of a magazine spread. If magazines did spreads on beautiful people with terrible personalities. "Well," she said, looking at my little folding table setup like it was exactly what she'd ordered. "I see they found the perfect spot for you." "What do you mean by that?" She gave me that smile I'd been seeing since we were kids. The one that meant she was about to say something that would hurt, and she was going to enjoy it. "Come on, Grace. You're smart enough to figure it out. Some people belong at the head table, and some people," she waved her hand at my chair, "belong wherever there's room left over." I looked at her standing there in her $5,000 dress, and for the first time in my life, I wasn't intimidated. Maybe it was because I'd just spent an hour discovering what she'd really been up to. Maybe it was because I finally understood that the problem wasn't me. "Guess you don't count." The words came out so casual, like she was commenting on the weather. But they hit me, different this time. Not because they hurt, but because they were finally honest. For once, Chloe was telling the truth about how this family really worked. "You know what, Chloe? You're right. I don't count. At least not to you. I stood up slowly, but Tyler's family might be interested to know what they're really investing in. Her whole face changed. The fake smile disappeared, and she looked genuinely scared for maybe the first time in her life. What are you talking about? I held up my phone with the screenshot of her Instagram post. You really thought nobody would notice $150,000 in fake corporate expenses? LinkedIn is public, Chloe. So are vendor group chats where people complain about clients who try to commit fraud. She reached for my phone, but I pulled it back. That's not what this is. You're twisting everything because you're jealous. Jealous of what exactly? The fact that you've been stealing from Dad's business to pay for all this? I gestured around at the fancy decorations. Or jealous that you're about to inherit a company you just bankrupted? You don't know what you're talking about. I know that Brooks Hotel Empire isn't just any investor. They're the deal that makes or breaks Wellington Hospitality's future. If they find out their new business partner has been committing financial fraud, they're going to run so fast it'll make your head spin. Chloe's eyes got wide. She hadn't thought about that part. She'd been so focused on getting Tyler to marry her and securing her inheritance that she forgot his family were actual business people who would definitely notice missing money. You wouldn't dare tell them. Try me. For the first time in our entire relationship, I was the one with power. She couldn't cry her way out of this one. She couldn't get Mom and Dad to make me stop. She couldn't make this my fault. Grace, please. It's not that simple. There are reasons. There are always reasons with you, aren't Chloe? But this time the receipts don't lie. I started walking toward the exit. Enjoy your reception. I hope it's everything Dad's business paid for. The Vermont evening was cold, but it felt good after sitting in that stuffy hallway. I could hear music starting up inside, probably their first dance. The same dance Chloe had been practicing since middle school, dreaming about her perfect wedding day. I sat in my car in the parking lot and pulled out my phone again. Caroline Brooks, Tyler's mother, had connected with me on LinkedIn about a year ago during some hospitality industry networking event. She seemed like a smart woman who'd built her family's hotel chain through careful business decisions and due diligence. More importantly, she'd understand exactly what financial fraud could do to a family company. I typed carefully, "Mrs. Brooks, I hope your son's wedding is beautiful. I wanted to share some concerns about potential financial irregularities at Wellington Hospitality before your investment decision becomes final. Would you be available for a brief conversation tomorrow?" I attached all the screenshots and invoices I'd found. Nothing emotional, just facts and documentation. Then I sent a similar message to Dad, copying the same evidence. "Dad, I found these while researching our vendor relationships. We need to talk tomorrow about protecting the business." I didn't message Mom or Chloe. They'd figure it out soon enough. The drive back to Boston took 3 hours, and my phone was buzzing the entire time. I didn't look at it until I was back in my apartment with a cup of tea, sitting on my couch in my pajamas. 17 missed calls from Mom, 8 from Dad, 12 from Chloe, and 1 from a number I didn't recognize that turned out to be Tyler when I finally listened to the voicemail. "Grace, it's Tyler. I think we need to talk. Can you call me back tonight? It's important." But the message I really wanted to hear was from Caroline Brooks. She'd responded to my LinkedIn message faster than I expected. "Grace, thank you for bringing this to our attention. We'll be conducting our own review before moving forward with any business arrangements. I hope you understand this is necessary to protect both families. Can we schedule a call first thing Monday morning?" I felt this weird mix of relief and terror. Relief because someone was finally taking this seriously. Terror because I'd just blown up my sister's wedding and possibly my family's business, all in one night. I barely slept. Every time I closed my eyes, I kept seeing Chloe's face when she realized I wasn't bluffing, or thinking about Dad's reaction when he figured out what had been happening under his nose for months. My phone rang at 7 a.m., It was Dad. Grace, we need to talk. Can you drive up today? His voice sounded exhausted, like he'd been up all night too. Is Chloe there? She and Tyler are working some things out. Caroline Brooks called me this morning. She's putting the investment on hold pending a full financial review. I could hear the stress in his voice, but also something else. Relief, maybe? Dad, I'm sorry this happened during the wedding, but don't apologize. You might have saved the business. Maybe saved all of us. The drive back to Vermont felt completely different this time. Yesterday I'd been driving to a wedding where I didn't belong. Today I was driving to a family meeting where, for the first time in my life, my voice actually mattered. When I got to my parents' house, the atmosphere was tense. Mom was sitting at the kitchen table looking like she'd been crying. Dad was pacing around with paperwork spread everywhere. And Tyler was there, looking like someone who'd just dodged a bullet he didn't even know was coming. Chloe was nowhere to be seen. Where is she? I asked. Her old bedroom, Mom said quietly. She's processing everything. Tyler spoke up. Grace, I owe you an explanation. And an apology. You don't owe me anything, Tyler. This isn't your fault. Actually, it kind of is. He ran his hands through his hair. My mom's team ran a background check on your family's business about a month ago. They found some irregularities in the financial reports, but Mom wanted to wait until after the wedding to bring it up. She didn't want to cause drama during what should have been a happy time. Dad stopped pacing. What kind of irregularities? Vendor payments that didn't match services provided. Corporate expenses that looked more like personal purchases. The numbers didn't add up, but we thought maybe it was just sloppy bookkeeping. It wasn't sloppy bookkeeping, I said. It was systematic fraud. Tyler nodded. When I got your evidence last night, Mom called an emergency meeting with our financial team. They worked all night going through everything. The forensic accountant will be here Monday, but based on what they found in just 12 hours, we're looking at almost $200,000 in fraudulent expenses over the past year. Mom made this small sound, like air getting knocked out of her. Most of it was wedding-related, Tyler continued. Vendors were told to inflate invoices and bill everything as business development or corporate entertainment. Some of the vendors were completely fake, just shell companies set up to funnel money. Dad sat down hard in his chair. How did I miss this? Because Chloe handled all the vendor relationships, I said. You trusted her to manage the business side of the wedding planning, and she used that trust to steal from you. The Brooks investment was supposed to be our expansion capital, Dad said quietly. Without it, we can't afford the new property acquisitions we had planned. With this level of financial fraud, we might not even be able to keep the properties we have. That's when Chloe finally came downstairs. She looked terrible. Mascara smudged, wedding dress wrinkled, hair falling out of its fancy style. But instead of looking sorry, she looked angry. So this is how it's going to be? She said, looking directly at me. You're all going to gang up on me because Grace is jealous? Chloe, Dad started, but she cut him off. No, Dad. This is exactly what she wanted. She's always been jealous that I was getting married first, that Tyler's family wanted to partner with us, that I was going to inherit the business. So she made up all these lies to ruin my wedding. I pulled out my phone and showed her the screenshots again. These aren't lies, Chloe. These are your vendor invoices, your Instagram posts, your text messages to vendors asking them to inflate charges. You have no right to investigate me. Someone had to, Tyler said quietly. Grace saved both our families from a terrible business decision. Chloe spun around to face him. Tyler, you can't believe this. She's lying because she's always hated me. Tell them you don't believe this. Tyler looked at her for a long moment, and I could see something die in his eyes. Chloe, I've seen the evidence. My mom's forensic team confirmed everything. This isn't about Grace hating you. This is about you stealing money from your own family's business. We can fix this, she said desperately. I can pay it back. It was just temporary. I was going to replace it all once the Brooks investment came through. With what money? Dad asked. And how are you planning to explain where $200,000 went missing? Mom finally spoke up. Chloe, honey, we need to understand why you did this. Because it's my inheritance anyway, Chloe shouted. You were giving me the business after I married Tyler. I was just accessing my money a little early. The room went completely silent. It was never your money, Dad said slowly. It was the family business. All of ours. That's when I realized something. Chloe genuinely believed that marrying Tyler entitled her to steal from the company. In her mind, the wedding wasn't just a celebration. It was a business transaction that gave her ownership rights immediately. Tyler was staring at Chloe like he was seeing her for the first time. You thought marrying me gave you the right to steal from your father's business? It's not stealing if it's going to be mine anyway, Chloe said, but her voice was getting smaller. Even she was starting to realize how that sounded. Chloe, Mom said carefully, the business succession plan was conditional. It depended on you demonstrating responsibility and commitment to the company's values. Stealing $200,000 doesn't exactly demonstrate responsibility, Tyler said. Dad looked older than I'd ever seen him. The forensic accountant comes Monday, but I think we all know what they're going to find. The question now is what we do about it. I can fix this, Chloe said again. Tyler, your family's investment will more than cover what I borrowed. It's not a problem. Except my family isn't investing anymore, Tyler said quietly. The partnership is off. And honestly, Chloe, after what I've learned in the past 24 hours, I think we need to talk about more than just business. You could have heard a pin drop. What do you mean? She asked. Tyler looked at his hands. I mean, I'm not sure I know who I married yesterday. You married me? The same person you've been with for 2 years. The person I've been with for 2 years wouldn't steal from her own family. The person I thought I knew wouldn't post on social media about her sister not mattering. The person I fell in love with wouldn't commit fraud and then act like it's everyone else's fault. I felt bad for Tyler. He looked heartbroken and confused and angry all at the same time. Chloe turned on me again. This is all your fault. If you hadn't gone digging around, if you'd just stayed in your lane like always. My lane? I stood up. Chloe, you put me next to the trash cans at your wedding and told me I don't count. What lane was I supposed to stay in? The one where I watch you destroy Dad's business and don't say anything? You've always been jealous of me. You know what? You're right. I was jealous. I was jealous that Mom and Dad treated you like you could do no wrong while I had to work twice as hard for half the recognition. I was jealous that you got handed opportunities I had to earn. I was jealous that you never had to prove yourself worth loving. The room went quiet again. I hadn't planned to say all that, but once it started coming out, I couldn't stop. But you know what I wasn't jealous of? Your willingness to steal from people who love you. Your ability to justify hurting your own family for money. Your complete lack of conscience about destroying the business our grandfather built. Mom was crying now. Dad just looked defeated. Tyler stood up. I think I need some air, and I think Chloe and I need to have a very serious conversation about our marriage. After he left, the four of us sat there in this terrible silence. Finally, Dad spoke. We have to decide what to do about the money. I can pay it back, Chloe said for the third time. With what? I asked. You don't have a job. Tyler's family isn't investing. Where exactly is $200,000 going to come from? The insurance settlement from Grandpa's old property, she said. It's supposed to come through next month. Dad shook his head. That settlement is earmarked for property improvements and debt reduction. It's not free money, Chloe. So what happens now? Mom asked. Dad rubbed his forehead. The forensic accountant will document everything. We'll have to file insurance claims for the fraud, which means involving law enforcement. The IRS will probably want to review our books since corporate expenses were misclassified, and we'll have to figure out how to stay solvent without the Brooks investment. What about Chloe? Mom asked quietly. What about me? Chloe said. Dad looked at her sadly. You can't inherit a business you've been stealing from, honey. The succession plan is off the table. That's when Chloe really lost it. She started screaming about how unfair everyone was being, how I'd ruined her life, how she deserved better treatment from her own family. It was like watching a toddler have a meltdown, except the toddler was 26 years old and had just committed financial fraud. Tyler came back inside during the worst of it. He took one look at Chloe screaming and shook his head. I can't do this, he said to Dad. I'm sorry, but I need to go home and think about everything. Chloe, I'll call you tomorrow when you've calmed down. After he left, Chloe collapsed into a chair and finally stopped yelling. You all hate me, she said. We don't hate you, Mom said, but we're disappointed and hurt, and honestly, scared about what this means for our family. Dad was looking at paperwork again. Grace, I know this is a lot to ask, but would you consider taking a leave of absence from your job in Boston? We're going to need all hands on deck to save the business. I'd been wondering when that conversation would happen. What exactly are you asking? I'm asking if you'd consider coming on as Chief Financial Officer, temporarily, until we get through this crisis, maybe permanently if you're interested. I looked around the room, Mom nodding hopefully, Dad looking desperate, and Chloe staring at me with absolute hatred. I'll consider it, I said. But if I do this, things change. No more golden child favorites. No more family members getting special treatment. No more decisions made based on who cries the loudest. Dad nodded immediately. Agreed. And full transparency on all business operations. Board oversight on major decisions. Professional accountability across the board. Whatever you think is necessary. Chloe finally spoke up. So that's it? She gets everything and I get nothing? You get the chance to pay back what you stole and avoid criminal charges, I said. That's more generous than you deserve. She looked at me with pure hate. I'll never forgive you for this. I'm not asking you to. I took a deep breath and looked at Dad. I'll need 2 weeks to think about the CFO position. This is a big decision that affects my whole life. Of course, he said. Take all the time you need. As I got up to leave, Mom caught my arm. Grace, I know we have a lot to work through as a family, but thank you for caring enough about the business to speak up. It wasn't the apology I'd been waiting my whole life to hear, but it was a start. 2 weeks later, I was back in Vermont for another family meeting. This one felt completely different. The forensic accountant had finished their report. The final number was $187,000 in fraudulent expenses over 14 months. Dad's insurance would cover about half of it, but the company would still take a major hit. More importantly, the accountant had found evidence that could lead to criminal charges if we chose to pursue them. Tyler had filed for annulment. Turns out, when you discover your brand new spouse has been committing fraud against her own family, it counts as grounds for voiding the marriage. He'd been decent about it, though. He even offered to help with finding new investors who might be interested in partnering with Wellington Hospitality once we got our books cleaned up. Chloe had moved to California to stay with our cousin Maria. She'd sent Dad a letter promising to pay back what she could, but honestly, none of us expected to see much of that money anytime soon. I was sitting in the same conference room where we'd had that terrible family meeting after the wedding, but this time it was just me and Dad. Mom was there too, but she was mostly listening. So, Dad said, have you made a decision about the CFO position? I'd spent the past 2 weeks thinking about everything. My job in Boston, my apartment, my life that I'd built completely separate from family drama. Coming back to work for Wellington Hospitality meant giving up my independence and jumping right back into the middle of all this dysfunction. But it also meant finally having a voice in the family business. It meant being able to protect what our grandfather had built. It meant proving that I could count, even if Chloe thought I couldn't. "I'll do it," I said, "but I want some things in writing." Dad nodded. "Name them." "First, I want a proper employment contract with market rate salary. No family discounts. No working for free because we're related. Done. Second, I want voting rights on the board of directors equal to any future partners. No decisions about the company get made without my input. Agreed. Third, if Chloe ever wants to come back and be involved in the business, she has to apply like any other candidate. No automatic positions because she's family." Dad was quiet for a minute. "That's going to be hard for your mother to accept." "It's hard for me to accept that I spent 29 years being treated like the backup daughter," I said. "But here we are." Mom finally spoke up. "Grace, I know we failed you. I know we put Chloe's wants ahead of your needs for way too long. If you're willing to help save the business, you have my word that things will be different." It wasn't perfect, but it felt honest. Dad pulled out a folder. "The lawyers have been working on restructuring our partnership agreements. We're also implementing new financial oversight policies. 2 signatures required for any expense over $500. Monthly board reviews of all vendor relationships. External audits every quarter." "Good," I said. "What about new investors?" Tyler's been helpful there. He introduced us to a firm in Portland that specializes in hospitality management. They're interested in a partnership that would give us expansion capital without requiring family ownership changes. I looked through the paperwork. It was solid: conservative growth, sustainable practices, professional oversight. Everything we should have been doing all along. "When do I start?" I asked. "How's Monday?" I laughed. "That fast? We've got a lot of work to do." The next 6 months were intense. I gave notice at my Boston job, found a sublet for my apartment, and moved back to Vermont. It was weird living close to my parents again after being independent for so long, but I got a place in town instead of moving back to the family house. Boundaries were important. Working with Dad was actually good. He'd always respected my intelligence. He just hadn't known how to show it when Chloe was demanding all the attention. Without her drama sucking up all the oxygen in the room, we could actually focus on business decisions. The Portland partnership worked out well. They brought capital and expertise. We brought local knowledge and established customer relationships. By the end of the year, Wellington Hospitality was not only stable, but growing again. Chloe called me once during that time. She was working as a server at a restaurant in San Diego and had started paying back small amounts. 200 here, 300 there. It wasn't much, but it was something. "I still think you ruined my life," she said during that call. "I think you ruined your own life," I replied. "But I hope you figure out how to build a new one." She hung up on me, but at least she was trying to make amends in her own way. Mom and I started having coffee together once a week. Not to talk about business, just to talk. She told me stories about growing up that I'd never heard before. I told her about my life in Boston, my friends, the parts of myself that had developed when I wasn't trying to compete for family attention. "You know," she said one morning, "I always thought you didn't need us because you were so capable." I realize now that was just an excuse for not trying harder. "I did need you," I said. "I just learned how to pretend I didn't." Tyler reached out about a year later. He was dating someone new and seemed genuinely happy. "I wanted to thank you again," he said, "for saving me from making the biggest mistake of my life." "You would have figured it out eventually," I told him. "Maybe. But not before losing a lot of money and probably my family's business." These days, I run the financial operations for Wellington Hospitality. We've got 4 properties now instead of 3, and we're profitable enough to be considering expansion into New Hampshire. I serve on the board of directors and have input on every major decision. The hallway seating at Chloe's wedding was supposed to remind me that I didn't count. Instead, it gave me the clarity I needed to see what was really happening in my family. Sometimes being pushed to the margins is exactly where you need to be to get the full picture. I still think about that folding chair next to the trash cans sometimes. The smell of lilies and bleach, the sound of music I wasn't invited to hear. But mostly, I remember the moment I stopped waiting for permission to matter. At my sister's wedding, I was seated in the hallway. Today, I'm sitting at the head of the boardroom table. Different chair, better view, same me, just finally in the right place.